Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is The Current Podcast.
Recently, I've been thinking more about women's equality, and I'm frustrated because I want to believe that we've achieved equality, but I don't think it's true. I don't think we're there yet. How are women expected to achieve equal rights and equal pay when we can't even achieve equal-sized pants pockets on our jeans? Yes, I know. It's upsetting. Thank you. I see you, men. I see you with your deep pockets. You can fit a phone in there. You can fit a wallet in there. You can fit your dignity in there. Meanwhile, I'm lucky if I'm getting half a hand in here, all right? That's it. That's the end of the pocket. That's the whole thing.
Canadian comedian Zoe Brownstone is not the only one frustrated with inadequate pockets in women's clothes. For generations, women have agitated for pocket equity. And you may have thought pockets are a little thing, but it turns out there's a whole lot of history tucked inside. Hannah Carlson teaches dress history and material culture at the Rhode Island School of Design. And she's the author of Pockets, an intimate history of how we keep things close. I spoke with her in December. Here's our conversation. I didn't know. I just did not know the history of pockets. I did not know that I was part of the pocket patriarchy. I just didn't know. Are women and girls getting shortchanged when it comes to pockets?
Well, for at least a couple hundred years, women have been complaining about this, what they call their greatest lack. And they've agitated with much earnestness, give us pockets. And it's astonishing that it's been this long. And I think that reveals quite a lot.
What are the roots of that?
Well, I think there are two main things happening. One is just the really different trajectory of menswear and women's wear. And then the second really important one is beliefs about who needs pockets, and how people use them. But in terms of menswear, the suit evolved really early as a uniform. And the suit goes from this craft product where tailors make it by hand to this sort of more industrialized product where you can buy it off the rack at Brooks Brothers in 1850. And pockets are part of the expectation. And that doesn't happen with women's wear. Women's wear is made by hand. You cannot walk into a store and get it off the rack until 1920. Women had carried a tie-on pocket under the skirt, but as women's modern dress evolves, there's this expectation that women will carry handbags. There's this belief that women don't really need them, that menswear, you have to have this suit that is like this mobile storehouse, And women have just thought, well, they've got a little bits that they need in their purse.
But whose belief was it that women didn't need pockets?
Well, it is all of our beliefs, really. I think the things that we make showcase the ideas we don't really want to say out loud. After second wave feminism, we're still not equal. We tiptoe around that fact. And instead, you go into a store and you want to buy, a dress for your child, your girl. Their shorts are so short and sparkly. There's no room for a pocket, no room to carry, all your treasures. And from a very early age, I think we sort of agree as a culture that women's wear, girls' wear is meant to be pretty, and men's wear is meant to be utilitarian.
When do you trace the history of pockets back to?
Well, they go all the way back to the 16th century. So around 1540, you begin to see tailors' invoices, and they say, okay, I'm going to add a couple of, this leather pocket to your breeches. And so you see tailors begin to stitch inside men's breeches, which were these big, puffy, pumpkin-like bloomers. I don't know, think Henry VIII. And he's got that doublet and that funny big trouser thing. And it seems as though pockets are a kind of an improvisation. Tailors say, oh, look at this big baggy breeches you're wearing. Why don't we stick these bags inside your clothes instead of having you carry your purse strapped to your belt? So before pockets are stitched into clothes, they're just a kind of a little bag. And in fact, the word means, poke is, an Anglo-Norman derivation of French poche, so bag. So 16th century, first pockets, and we don't know which tailor had that aha moment. It's just lost to us.
Yeah, at one point, and I read this in your book, in France, they actually tried to regulate the size of pockets. Why was that?
Well, this is a great story, and I think it's really surprising. One of the surprising stories of this early moment is that pockets are not just a nifty device. They're kind of this threatening private space, because one of the first objects that's miniaturized and is associated with pockets are pocket pistols,
right.
The first handguns. And a new technology enables guns to be miniaturized, and that's the wheel lock mechanism. So instead of lugging around this 3-foot gun that you have to stop and use two hands to light, you could actually carry it, and you could set it up so it would be ready to shoot. And so, rulers get really anxious about this. And the sort of really amazing evidence for me are these early proclamations. And the Queen Elizabeth and James I try to ban pocket pistols. In France, they try to ban pockets themselves and say, you cannot have a pocket that's longer than, 6 inches. So in other words, we're going to ban pockets, not the weapons, was the idea in France.
It's not just about having pockets. It's also about there's a cultural significance to pockets, and especially when it comes to putting your hand in your pockets. So tell me about that. What message does that send when somebody's got their hand in their pockets?
Well, I think that's such an interesting gesture, hands in your pockets. And I think the gesture oscillates between sort of sexual and psychological registers. So, pockets locate to lust. They're over and around erogenous zones, right? So when you have your hand there, the reason that teachers and mothers say, get your hands out of your pockets, is because, your hand is too close to the genitals. So what is your hand doing was a big question. But this is the other sort of thing, is that, from oratory and acting and public speaking, the hand removed into clothing, like a senator in Roman times who put the hand in the toga, was considered reserved. So the psychological gesture sort of suggests this kind of mystery. And so I think we get our notion of cool from this sort of moving back and forth between kind of, it's sexy and rude on the one hand, but it's also contained on the other.
It's not only your hands in your pocket. I mean, what can you tell about a person by what they keep in their pocket?
I mean, that's also fascinating. I think that, we're curious about other people's pockets. Don't you feel slightly like, have you ever gone through the airport security, or you have to remove everything when you're in a federal building? And it's kind of I don't want anyone to know about that.
Absolutely. I remember being a kid and my mother saying to me, empty your pockets, because she knew something was up.
Right. But I think it's every other collection we have and own, our home, the car, the books that you have, your CDs, those are kind of public. People see those collections. And I think there's something about what you carry that reveals the real you. So I think Shakespeare says at one point in The Tempest, if your pockets could speak, would they say you lie? Looking at pockets and trying to understand who people are is something that happens still today.
Well, tell us too about as the women's rights movement. I mean, even going back to the suffragists, they were complaining about pockets. I mean, why was that part of their agenda?
Yeah. So for a while, clothes had been a problem, and women had been in the 19th century. Remember, they're wearing corsets and these big, long trailing skirts, and women's rights activists start to say, this is actually a problem. It's more than just fashion. This is holding us back. And by the 1880s, women actually start to vocally complain. They call the lack of pockets their greatest lack. The New York Times gets in on the act. And in 1899, they've got this headline that says, men's clothes full of pockets, while women have but few, right? Civilization demands pockets. And so sometimes the demand for the vote and the demand for pockets were made together. With Charlotte Perkins Gilman, the feminist sociologist, said, look, without pockets, you do not feel prepared. You do not have the confidence that you can meet any emergency. And she imagined this utopian world in 1915 in her novel, Herland. So Herland is this imaginary island run by women and only populated by women. And on that land, they have these crazy suits, and these suits were quilted in pockets, right? So in her imagination, this would be the perfect place where you had pockets that were ingeniously arranged, that you could, get them wherever you wanted them. And I think actually Toad in The Wind in the Willows says it best. That was the children's book around 1890. Without pockets, you are not equipped for the real contest. And that's what those women's rights activists were sort of noting.
But a long, hard-fought battle, which is we said off the top, is still ongoing. But I thought it was interesting too when we looked at World War II, when the women had their uniforms, they still didn't have the same pockets that men had. Why was that?
Well, that's, I think, really amazing evidence because in World War II in the U.S., the quartermaster general had never actually made uniforms fitted to women or women's bodies. They're trying to figure out how to design, what does a woman's uniform look like? And a couple of compromises are made early on. One is we're going to keep the skirt. We don't want men to think that these recruits are Amazons, or lesbians was one anxiety, or prostitutes. So, let's have a skirt. Then there's this question about what the coat looks like. And apparently there were several experiments done, like, what does it look like to put cigarettes or useful objects in breast coat pockets? And they did not like that. Did not look good. It seemed to sort of disrupt notions of femininity. So even in the military, this place where function is paramount, notions of femininity were seemingly disrupted. And so instead of pockets, any working pockets, they invent this sort of horrible looking purse, which has all these problems. It doesn't stay on your shoulder. So then you have to strap it over one shoulder. And so you see these whack recruitment posters with women, a purse slung around their shoulder, like looking like they're not going off to war. They're going off to the supermarket. Why do we have to carry this badge of servitude? That's what suffragists called the purse.
And to this day, if you and I go to the store and I buy my men's jeans and you buy your women's jeans, are our pockets going to be different?
Yes, they are. And there's to this day, there's some wonderful studies about how in this great study, a couple of graphic designers looked at 70 pairs of mass market jeans available and discovered that, pockets for women are about half as long and you cannot fit most cell phones in that jean, much less your hand. So it seems as though manufacturers want the look of a pocket, but they don't want to go to the trouble to make a pocket.
Has writing this book changed the way you think about your own pockets?
Well, I try to see how many times I can get by without carrying a bag and under what conditions. It doesn't always work in the summer, let me tell you. And I am a careful buyer and try to find really fun pockets that have lots of, let me say that there are some great pockets, and that's, I think, especially the sportswear continuum and where sportswear sort of moves to daily wear, where you get good pockets. But I think more than anything, this project has made me think about the design of our world and how much small things matter.
What then is the future of pockets?
Well,
dare I ask?
Yes, I think you should ask that. And I think actually that like futuristic fiction, like Star Wars, from Star Wars on, there have been all these folks who hope to abolish all encumbrance. Like this idea that you could just walk out and be free and not have to carry anything is something that really shows up a lot in futurist sort of imagining. And today there's this crazy sort of field of wearables. We won't have to actually carry tools. It will all be, in our clothes somehow. Or, if Google gets their say, we'll be walking around with contact lenses, instead of phones. That, I don't know. I think that's not actually going to happen because I think people and designers love pockets. And sometimes a lucky charm held in your pocket, keeps you going, sustains momentum. We are hoarders of all sorts of weird stuff. There are no digital handkerchiefs, for example. We're still going to need a pocket for that. But more importantly, where are you going to make sure you're not feeling totally uncomfortable at a cocktail party if you don't have pockets to hide your hands in?
35 years of being a journalist, Hannah. This is the first conversation I've ever had about pockets, and I'm glad we had it.
I'm proud that I made you think about it. That's great.
Thank you so much.
Glad. Okay, bye.
Cheers. Anna Carlson's book is called Pockets, An Intimate History of How We Keep Things Close. We spoke in December.
We need pockets, please. Women carry things. Having to carry a purse can be annoying. Oh, no, don't give me that pay. No, what's the point if it's useless? I'm actually trying to use it to carry my phone. So give me pockets on my jeans.
That was TikToker Heather Chelan.